figured maybe Fox would have written that question if it was just the second part of the question. But just so you understand...
We didn't write any of the questions. You all wrote the questions.
Fox News held a town hall for former President Trump in Iowa on Wednesday, hosted by Brett Baier and Martha MacCallum. In this forum, the audience of Iowa caucus goers had a chance to ask Trump questions. But here's my question. Might one of those questions have been rigged, or in other words, written by Fox News? Trump seemed to think so. So let's take a listen.
I'm going to vote for the third time for President Trump.
Oh, I like him. I knew I liked Robert. What's your question for the former president?
Some of my friends that supported you in 2020 are not this time because they believe a Trump presidency will bring 4 years of chaos due to your haters. What is your response to them?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm glad you're asking the question. And I'm very glad that you started off by saying you're with me because I want you on my side. I figured maybe Fox would have written that question if it was just the second part of the question. But just so you understand...
We didn't write any of the questions. You all wrote the questions, just to be clear.
We'll figure that one out pretty soon. But they have chaos now. They have chaos at the border. They have chaos in the military. People are going woke. We have the greatest military in the world.
After identifying himself as a Trump supporter, a 3-time Trump supporter, this guy launched into the following question. Quote, some of my friends who supported you in 2020 are not this time because they believe that a Trump presidency will bring 4 years of chaos due to your haters. What is your response to them? And Trump kind of didn't like the second part of that question because it tends to buy into a leftist narrative of chaos. And I say leftist, but it's also something that Nikki Haley has seized on. This idea that a Trump administration is chaos is something we heard all the way back in 2015 from Jeb Bush. So it's a little suspicious that the very first question in this Iowa town hall for Trump has that word chaos in it from this guy who otherwise seems like a Trump fan. So might Fox News have intervened in that question somehow? Well, Martha MacCallum vigorously denied it. And Trump just kind of brushed it off, but he did suggest that it sounds like maybe Fox News wrote the second part of that question. And the reason that I find it suspicious is because someone who votes for Trump and someone who's a big Trump supporter doesn't really use the word chaos and attribute that noun to his governance, because that is obviously something that Trump's enemies use. But, otherwise, I would say Martha MacCallum and Brett Baier did a decent job as moderators. They've always been pretty much played it straight on Fox News. Not to say that I'm staying up, at night waiting to hear Brett Baier's takes on politics, but he's like a fairly reasonable guy who asks decent questions, and he's not really... he tries to be, I believe, an objective journalist. And Martha MacCallum, on the other hand, I kind of got the vibe like she is a big Nikki Haley supporter. But they both asked Trump questions that could have been posed by his primary opponents, former governor of North Carolina, Nikki Haley, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And I think that was appropriate because you don't want to just give Trump an opportunity to do stream of consciousness for an hour, which is like Trump's Sean Hannity interviews, frankly. It is good to hear a little pushback and hear how Trump responds to the pushback. So I think that is appropriate. But again, I did get the feeling like Martha MacCallum was a little emotionally invested in the concept of Nikki Haley, shall we say. And finally, one of the important takeaways from the town hall was about the primary process, and it came from Trump himself. So Martha MacCallum was very adamant that Haley was closing the gap with Trump in New Hampshire. And indeed, according to the Wall Street Journal, quote, a CNN poll this week shows Miss Haley within striking distance of Mr. Trump in New Hampshire at 32% to his 39%. So that's kind of surprising. I mean, Nikki Haley's coming close in New Hampshire. But here's how Trump responded. He made the point that New Hampshire is an open primary, and that means that Democrats and independents can vote in it. So what Trump is suggesting there is that if we see a surprise in New Hampshire, it's not necessarily because of Republicans. I think that is such a stupid system, frankly. And various states have open primaries. I believe it's a relic of an earlier time when Republicans and Democrats could come, like, reasonably have a conversation and maybe engage in each other's primaries without nefarious intent. We are not in those times anymore, okay? If Democrats are voting in the Republican primary, they're doing so just to mess with it, to sabotage, to pick the wrong person. Or in the case of Nikki Haley, they're picking her because she is kind of like a neoliberal, if you will. She supports kind of just the neoliberal agenda, the neocon agenda, call it what you will. So here's what Trump said, quote, well, you have Democrats in New Hampshire and they vote. And you have independents in New Hampshire in large numbers and they vote. New Hampshire, for one thing, is kind of a moderate Republican situation. It's not like conservative Republicans, and that's cool. But there's also a lot of independents, and I think the point is that New Hampshire is not necessarily a bellwether for how the Republican electorate is feeling. Not to say it's not important, it's very important. Iowa's important too, but Iowa, and that's where this town hall was, is not necessarily the best ground for Trump because they're very big on the pro-life stuff and they're very big on the religious conservatism, and that's not necessarily Trump's bread and butter. And, finally, I think this was a very strong town hall for Trump. Although I personally think Fox News tried to mess with him a little bit with that first town hall question, he acquitted himself very adroitly, very deftly parrying all the questions. And he came off like he was skeptical of Fox News, but he was not in a bad mood. He was not bitter. He kind of had his usual lighthearted way about him. So those who are trying to take shots at Trump that he's too old and that he's not on the ball, I think that he answered them quite well with this Iowa town hall on Wednesday. My name is Michael McCarra. Thank you so much for listening. Follow me on Twitter in the description. You can find my Twitter handle and check out my blog, michaelmccarrablog.com, and finally, like and subscribe to my channel.
I've only heard what love can